Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Career Evangelist podcast. We have another amazing guest with us today. She spent nearly 30 years inside a Fortune 100 boardroom, reshaping workplace culture on a global scale, then wrote the book on equity. Literally, she's a VP, Chief Diversity Officer, author.
Former.
Former. She's a former chief diversity officer. She's an author, co-founder of Destination STEM, and she's here to give your career a serious upgrade. Welcome to the Career Evangelist podcast, Celeste, and we are happy to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Well, thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate it. I love the name of this podcast, The Career Evangelist. Well, it's really, really unique.
That's what we are doing here. We are evangelizing and telling people about how to, I would say, upgrade their career so
Mhm.
that they can have fun doing what they do and make money in the process. So most people, I would say they know about diversity,
Mhm.
but maybe very few people truly understand the word equity. So in simple terms, Celeste, what is the biggest misconception that working professional carry about equity at work?
Yeah, a misperception that people have about equity, number one, I think the biggest one is that it is when you think about equity and you think about integrating it into the people strategies and processes like talent acquisition, recruiting and staffing, talent management, promotions, all of that, that you're basically, when you think about equity, they'll think, oh, well, you're lowering the standard of the qualifications for the people who should go into the role. And that couldn't be quite the opposite. What you're doing is when you think about making sure that people processes are fair and equitable, you actually widen the pool. You widen the number of candidates that are that you can bring into a role. You widen the opportunities to develop people that are in roles and within your organization. And it's just something that it doesn't cause friction. It doesn't lower the standard. It basically is saying that you know the skills, capabilities, strengths, areas for development, cultural experiences, and life experiences that people have and that you want for a particular role. Understanding that those skills, capabilities, strengths, areas for development, experiences, they can be woven into and embodied into a variety of different identities. So making sure that people understand that you're not lowering the standards when you think about having equitable practices.
Okay, I like the way you put it, Celeste. We are not lowering the standard, rather, one is seeking to widen the pool so that you can attract, I'll say, more talent. So now, in this new age, the word DEI, in my opinion, is somewhat now very political. So when you go out there talking to people about whether it's diversity, equity, and inclusion, how do you navigate this topic so that at least you are balancing the different views about DEI?
Yeah, DE and I, there's so much anti DE and I rhetoric out there because people don't understand the essence of what it is. Diversity is simply diversity, diverse and differences in people, those you can see and those you can't see. Inclusion, when you have all of those differences, different perspectives, different ideas, beliefs, different identities in your workforce, you have to surround them with a culture of inclusion so you can leverage all of those differences to get them to a common purpose. And that common purpose is usually the mission, the vision of your organization. And then equity comes in where you fully understand that all of those different people with all of those differences, they came from different starting points. And so you have to meet them where they are to get them to that collective purpose. And equity are the acts of equity that you would put in place where you meet people where they are, you understand them, you understand their skills, their capabilities, their experiences, what their life experiences are as well. And then you put things in place to help them to get to that collective purpose. You also remove barriers and obstacles that are preventing them from getting to that collective purpose. And so that's the essence of what it is. And when people say, oh, well, DE&I is gone, I just have to laugh because you don't understand the essence of what it is. It's leadership 101, it's management 101, and it's business 101. Just like we talk about it from a leadership standpoint, from a business standpoint, if I'm writing a sales and marketing strategy, I have to understand my customers. I have to understand how to do customer segmentation. I need to understand what's getting in the way from certain customers really being able to experience what we want them to experience out of our product or our service. And so you do that by studying the different segments of the customers, the different identities of the customers. That's marketing 101. And so, I just laugh when people say, well, DE&I is gone. It's not gone. It is the essence of what we do from a leadership perspective and from a business perspective. And if you don't understand that, then how can you be running a business? How can you be a leader?
I love it. Thank you, Celeste, for sharing that. I I couldn't add anything to what you just said. So you call it Leadership 101, Marketing 101, and Business 101. So thank you for sharing that insight. I know you are passionate about DE&I. You are a DE&I consultant, and you wrote a book, The Truth About Equity. So I want to hear what's the uncomfortable truth that most organizations that are still aren't ready to hear today.
Yeah, the truth about equity simply is there's a fear of it. And that's why it seems like people are trying so hard to erase it. And you can't erase it. Um, I talked about, people feel like, well, you're slowing things down or you're lowering the standard when you try to incorporate equitable practices into people strategies. Well, some people feel that you're giving preferential treatment to certain groups over others when you try to implement equity. And that couldn't be further from the truth. And in the book, I use the analogy of that illustration that everybody has seen, where in the first illustration, there's three people that are standing on one rock and they're facing a fence. The person on the right can't see over the fence with the rock. Person in the middle can barely see over the fence. The person on the left can clearly see over the fence. And then you get to the second illustration, and the person on the right has been given two additional rocks. So they now have three rocks. They can see over the fence. The person in the middle has been given an additional rock. They have two rocks. They can see over the fence now. The person on the left still has that one rock because they've always been able to see over the fence. And in my analogy with that, those rocks are the acts of equity. So now the people on the right can see over the fence. They have access to opportunities that they didn't have in the first illustration. But what's happening is the acts of equity, the work that we're doing in equity, it's causing a disruption. And that disruption comes from the fact that the person who was standing on one rock in both of those illustrations, well, they're looking to their right and they're saying, well, that person has three rocks, that person has two rocks. I only have one. That's not fair. That's not inclusive. I'm being excluded. And the thing is, nothing has been taken away from them because they've always been able to see over that fence. And in my analogy, that fence represents all of the isms, racism, sexism, homophobia, all of those things that they're longer term issues that are going to take a longer period of time and longer strategies, initiatives to try to pull out all of those isms from institutions and organizations and society as a whole. They didn't crop up overnight, and it's going to take longer term strategies to get rid of them. The rocks are more midterm and shorter term strategies. So while we're tearing down the fence, people can still have access to opportunities and still see over the fence. But that thing about preferential treatment, which is a misperception of equity, that person was still, their rock wasn't taken away from them. They still have it. They just noticed that their colleagues are getting extra rocks because they don't see the fence in front of them. They don't know how all of those isms manifest themselves organizationally and what that looks like to their colleagues on the right. They don't know what it feels like to be marginalized in the workplace. They don't know what it feels like to be passed over all of the time for roles and developmental opportunities and special projects that get you exposure. They don't know that. So what we need to do as as ambassadors for diversity and inclusion, we need to continue to put the rocks in place. We need to also be simultaneously tearing down the fence, but we also need to be having conversations and hard dialogue with those individuals that are standing on one rock in both of those illustrations and help them to understand that that fence is there, the rocks are needed, and how certain organizational systems and behaviors manifest themselves to his colleagues to the right. Because we ultimately want to get to that third illustration where the rocks are gone, the fence is torn down, and everybody can see the beautiful mountains ahead of them. Everyone has equal access to opportunities. Because even the person who was standing on one rock that doesn't need to even stand on that rock anymore realizes that the fence is gone because their vision now, they can see not just the forest and the trees, but they can see the roots and the trunks of the trees and all of that. So, that's what we're trying to get to, that vision of equal access for everyone, regardless of what you look like and where you started in your life's journey.
Oh, wow. So, Celeste, I'm smiling right here, listening to you. I love the illustration that you gave us with the fence and the rocks. I think the way I'm going to summarize this is that we are trying, and what equity is about leveling the playing field so that everyone will have equal access to opportunities. You are not tilting the scale in favor of one group versus another, but rather you are giving everyone equal opportunity. And to along with your first comment, you are in that way widening the pool so that you get more talent and you attract more people. So that's so beautifully said, Celeste. Thank you for sharing that insight. Now let's go into strategy. So for a professional who feels overlooked or under-sponsored in their organization, not because of their performance, but maybe because of their identity, because of all those isms that you talked about. What is the first most actionable move that they should make in order to maybe get their voice out, maybe upskill themselves so that they can have access to this opportunity that we are talking about?
So the first thing, Bola, that I would suggest that people do, the very first thing is sit down with their manager. And in essence, what I like to say is be your own human resources business partner. um, Sit down with your manager and have a discussion around what you feel your strengths are, your areas for development, the skills and capabilities that you have, the skills and the capabilities that you need to develop, and also the experiences that you have and those experiences that you may be missing. So don't come with a blank piece of paper, but come with your assessment of yourself already on a piece of paper, sent to your manager ahead of time, and setting up a time to talk to them about your development, having that conversation. Because you want to ask very, very direct questions around, first of all, do you agree with how I've assessed myself? And then the important things are, what am I missing? What skills, what capabilities, what experiences am I missing that I need to develop? And then how can we partner together to get those things that I'm missing? And then the next piece is, once you've done that, then also talk about the types of roles that you are ready for right now. Because when you go into various different jobs, the way I look at it is you're among other things, but one of the things is, what do I need to get that job? And then what am I going to develop while I'm in that job? And so having that type of a very transparent conversation with your immediate manager to start this ball rolling of development. Once you have that, you've had this conversation, and it's almost like an implied agreement with your manager, because you sat down and you've had a transparent conversation on your development, on what you need, and then agreement with, are you going to be helping me to develop in these areas? And if they are any type of a manager who's worth being a manager, the answer is yes, because that's their responsibility. That's their role in partnering with you to help you to develop. So that's the very first thing you should do. And then as roles are coming up, talk to your manager about them. Hey, this role opened up. Do you think this is something that I should pursue? And if they say yes or yes, then say, okay. And they can, help with you and endorse you. If they say, no, I don't think so, then it's time for that conversation to say, why not? So being very transparent in your relationship with your immediate manager for your own development is crucial. It's very, very important. And if they're not being proactive and having those discussions with you, the manager, you need to be proactive in having it with them.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing that. So this is about self-advocacy. And I will say, based on what you shared, it starts with self-assessment
Mhm.
for us to know where we are and what we want, and having that honest conversation with our manager so that they can be our partner as we move forward. So, in terms of this self-advocacy, why do you think many people, many working professionals are getting this wrong? Why are they not taking these steps?
Well, I think number one, it may be that they are waiting for the manager to initiate it. And, managers are supposed to be initiating it, but, as many good managers that are out there, there's probably two or three or four bad managers that are out there too. And so that's why essentially the professional owns their career.
Right.
They engage with their manager for help and guidance, but but the professional owns their own career. And
So,
so that's where you have to step up and you have to make sure that this is happening. And some people may just, they just think that, well, my manager is supposed to engage me. And so I'll just sit back and wait for them to engage me. And then a year goes by, another 18 months, and, 2 years goes by, and there hasn't been any movement or development of the professional because they haven't had that initial dialogue with their immediate manager.
we all know that there's a lot of focus
Mhm.
today about on mentorship. So there's sponsorship and there is mentorship.
Mhm.
I believe most have seen both work and maybe both failed. What's the strategic difference, and how should an ambitious professional actively cultivate one over the other?
Okay, well, mentorship those are very important, because those people that you pick your mentor. You establish that a relationship with the mentor. And the mentor is someone who can talk to you about your career. They can talk to you about various different things that happen in the workplace. They can talk to you about work-life balance. They can talk to you about ideas that you want to bounce off before you meet with a manager or a project leader or something like that. They can help you in that space. And it's really important that you have not just one mentor, but two or three or four that can help you in different areas where you need help and assistance. Now, a sponsor is someone who you don't pick; they pick you, and that's kind of a misperception that people have about sponsors. Sponsors are those people that behind closed doors in succession plan discussions, in talent discussions with management teams, with leadership teams, they are talking about you in a favorable light. They're advocating for you. They're talking about what you do well. They're talking about the fact that you are ready for your next role. They're highlighting your leadership skills and capabilities. They're talking about the relationship that they have with you. They've worked on projects with you. They have led projects that you've been a part of. They have been your boss at one point in time throughout your career. So they're having these conversations about you. Now, when I say that you don't pick your sponsor, because it's different from picking your mentor, because the sponsor is going to put their professional careers, their professional sort of potential on the line because they're advocating for you. So they're watching you. And the best thing that you can do to get someone to speak on behalf of you in those closed door sessions is to perform well, to build your skills and your capabilities, develop yourself in those opportunities where you have exposure, you're giving a presentation in a staff meeting, make sure that you're on point. Excuse me, that you know what you're talking about, that you're ready to answer questions and develop a dialogue in those opportunities. You have your elevator pitch ready for those opportunities as well. You have you know how to network within your organization. So you've built up this sort of reputation and performance through good performance, through developing yourself, through those opportunities of exposure and taking and leveraging those. And they've seen you and they've said, wow, Bola did an excellent job on this project, on this initiative, in this presentation with the staff. He's somebody who, if I have a job open, that's somebody that I want to consider for it. So you've made a favorable impression with that leader. And so they're going to sponsor you in these talent discussions because they've had exposure to you and you perform well. And that's the best way to kind of think about it. Always do well, perform at your best, look for those opportunities to get that exposure, volunteer to lead projects, volunteer to, because when you're leading those projects, you're inevitably the one who's going to be presenting and giving updates in staff meetings, and that gives you exposure. I always say that at the crossroad of development and opportunity is success. And so you want to be able to get that exposure so you can have those various different opportunities in that success. So that's where the sponsor comes in. They've seen you, they are like, oh, okay, they're advocating for you in those very important talent discussions, succession planning meetings, etc.
That's so good, Celeste. Thank you for sharing that with us. We have the world has, in my opinion, we've made a lot of progress. We may not be where we desire to be yet, So, in your opinion, is equity, is it getting better, worse, or just changing shape? I want to hear your unfiltered take on this, Celeste.
Yeah, I know, like right now, especially in the United States with the administration, um, that it feels like that we have taken 5 steps back from diversity, especially equity and inclusion. And, what history has taught us is that the pendulum swings continually. And so, what I mean by that is in periods of where there's been a rise in social activism, so the civil rights movement, for example, 2020 with the murder of George Floyd, when there's been an increase in social activism, usually the period that follows after a few years is a period of increased conservatism. And so that just happens throughout history. And we're just in a place now where the pendulum has swung to that conservatism. And so, what I tell people is just keep on living, keep on progressing, keep on moving forward because the pendulum is definitely going to swing back. Um, and we're going to get to a place where social activism is going to be important. We're going to get to a place where that inclusive leadership is going to be important. It's all going to become important, and we just need to make sure that we stay the course and we continue down this path because ultimately, what people are going to be looking at is how leaders and organizations how they reacted during these challenging times, how
Hmm.
they behaved, and they're going to be looking at that, and they're going to remember when the pendulum swings back again. They're going to remember how you acted and how you led and the behaviors that you exhibited during this time, and they're going to remember that, and your credibility is on the line now during times such as this that are challenging. And always remember that. So lead inclusively, make sure that you are continuing to be a diversity and inclusion ambassador as well.
Right, so that's so good. So finally, as we wrap it, Celeste, I've enjoyed this conversation. I think there are a lot of actions that listeners can take away from here. But I also want to give you an opportunity to tell our listeners if there's one thing that they should take away from this conversation in terms of positioning themselves for career growth, what would you tell them to do?
Be proactive. Put into place your career journey. Make sure that you're taking ownership of it. Because if you don't take ownership of it, how can you expect someone else to?
All right, so be proactive, guys, and take ownership. That's what Celeste is telling us. We definitely need to do this more. Thank you, Celeste. So my listeners, they would like to connect with you. They want to continue to follow you. Where can they find you? And let's more especially, how can they get your book?
Yes, well, you can get the book on Amazon, The Truth About Equity, what it really is, what it isn't, and why everyone wins when you get it right. It's on Amazon and it's in various different bookstores as well around the globe. You can get to me either on LinkedIn, Celeste Warren, she, her, or you can get to me at my website, www.crwdiversity.com. I love to stay engaged. I'm also on Instagram, on Facebook, as well as Substack as well.
Awesome. It's nice having you join us on the Career Evangelist podcast today. Thank you for your time, Celeste.
Thank you for the invitation.